What comes to mind when you first hear the words sniper in Battlefield? Do you think of a white glint sitting on a mountainside on Lansang Dam in Battlefield 4? Do you think of a British scout wielding an Iron Sights Martini Henry on Kaiserslacht in Battlefield 1? Regardless, the sniper role is a pretty pivotal one in Battlefield games, and many people know it by heart. However, I feel like if you go online and look up Battlefield Sniper Guide or Battlefield Recon Guide, and specifically Battlefield 6 Recon Guide, so many of the guides that are coming out now are these 30-second videos showing a setup on how to get more kills, get a higher KD, and die less. And although those are good things, I feel like very few focus on the team play aspect, which I find ironic because Battlefield is built off team play, hence the whole class system itself. So, I thought it would be pretty interesting to make a guide that actually focuses on how to work the sniper into the team dynamic rather than just telling you how to go 1v1 every other sniper on the enemy team and come out of it alive and have a higher KD by the end of the match. So, instead, I wanted to make a video talking about and highlighting how the sniper can support the team, get more objectives captured, defend more of your objectives, and overall support your allies in a way that I think is super critical to what Battlefield is. So, without further ado, let's jump right into the video. So for the first major section, I think is a good way to categorize it. I really want to talk about the overall, I guess, way to push that snipers are supposed to embody. Because I feel like with a lot of people, they have this notion of, oh, the sniper needs to sit back and just sit back and pick off all the other enemy snipers or some random straggler dude out in the far flank of the map. And although that isn't necessarily bad, and we'll talk about like counter sniping later, really there's three main things you want to keep in mind as the sniper. And those are Overwatch, counter sniping, tanks, and engineers. Those are going to be the key three we're going to be talking about throughout this video. So, keeping those in mind, let's roll into the first section, which is Overwatch. So, when you think of Overwatch, probably a few things come to mind, such as the game, for example, but the biggest thing is actually the term itself, because if you separate over and watch and turn it around, well, what does it say? It says watch over, and that's what Overwatch does. You are the guy sitting back and looking over your teammates as they push objectives, defend objectives, because unlike some of the other classes, such as the support or the assault, which are the frontliners, which means they're the guys constantly pushing the objectives, the sniper kind of sits back a little bit more. They're the ones that kind of have a more bird's eye view of the battlefield, hence, having a sniper scope and having a long range rifle. So notice what I'm doing here as I push closer to this objective. Notice how I'm kind of looking at all these enemies back here and kind of looking at the guys who are constantly shooting at my guys. Notice how I'm not keeping my distance, but I'm rather actually trying to push up and be around my teammates. In fact, I'm in front of them right now. So keeping that in mind, as a sniper, you don't always want to just sit back in safety. Rather, you want to push up, because if you're pushing with your teammates, you can probably see what they see. More importantly, you can see who's shooting at them. So notice that all the guys I'm shooting at here are, for the most part, not really looking at my direction, but rather they're looking at my teammates, and they're trying to get them off the point. So instead, I'm hanging over to the side here and shooting at the guys that are shooting at my guys. I'm even kind of looking up the hill now and then to see who is shooting at my guys down here. Because the assaults and the engineers and the supports are going to be able to play CQB better than the recon typically, but for those more longer range positions, such as might be used by an MG user or a sniper, they're going to pin your teammates down. So it's your job, because you're going to have an advantage with a long range rifle, to be able to sit back in a position and take out the guys who are giving your boys trouble. Because if you can do that, you're giving your guys a much stronger chance to push up to the objective. The way you do that is basically look for power positions. Look for the positions where you might see an MG gunner mounted up, or just an enemy sniper with their glint out just sitting in an elevated spot pinning your guys. Because that's the biggest thing you want to watch out for, is letting your guys get pinned. That's basically the key of what the Overwatch does, but to do it successfully, you want to make sure you're constantly pushing, stay with your teammates, and don't just sit back and objective. If you want to watch over them, keep your distance a little, but try to stay with your teammates and see what's giving them trouble and be the solution to those problems they might be encountering. For the second major point here, we really want to talk about counter sniping. Because counter sniping is pretty much what most people imagine when they think of the sniper class, which I think is ironic. Because, yes, I mean, you do want to take out the enemy snipers, you have the advantage to do so, and that's why I'm bringing it up here, but it's not the only thing you want to be doing. Regardless, it is an important thing to consider. As I just kind of mentioned in the Overwatch section, the assaults, the engineers, the supports, they are going to be able to do CQB better than you, unless you're just pistol whipping everyone you see, which you can still do, and I still do encourage. You don't always just want to rely on the sniper. The pistol is good too. However, when it comes to enemy snipers, they're gonna have an advantage. They're gonna be doing the exact same thing as you, trying to take out your guys to protect theirs. It's your job to disrupt that. If you see a sniper sitting on a position, usually high up in a building window or on a hillside, and they're constantly taking pot shots at your guys, and your guys aren't able to get them, well, simply because they have shorter range weapons, you need to take those guys out. It's not a, oh, maybe I will, but it's a need. And now you might be saying, well, what's the difference between that and not just sitting in the back and picking a fight with them all the time? Well, because that defeats some of the other points, which we'll get into with tanks and engineers, but also the Overwatch section. You want to be pushing with your teammates and supporting them, but at the same time, you need to know when to start looking for the enemy snipers. If you see a bunch of glints on maps such as this one, for example, Mirak Valley, or some of the other bigger maps in this game, kind of start memorizing or thinking about where those snipers might appear at and start considering when I push up to this objective, if my teammates don't need my help to pick off other enemies, maybe I should start looking for the snipers. Maybe I should start keeping an eye out to take them out. Now, don't get egotistical about it and think, oh, it's an enemy sniper. That's my rival. I gotta take him down. Because that's not what you want to be doing either, because once again, that defeats the other points. But you definitely want to keep an eye out for those guys. And now you might be thinking, well, how do I not get myself taken out? They're just going to be doing the same thing as me. Well, the biggest thing is repositioning. I see a lot of people who are playing as a sniper class, and yes, I know it's ironic given I'm rushing with a pistol right now in close quarters, but I feel like a lot of people, when they're playing the sniper class, they just keep repeating the same thing. And that's so egotistical, and it's going to get you killed. Like, easily going to get you killed. I see it happen all the time. So as a sniper, think of it like if you ever played a Sniper Elite game. You just want to constantly be moving. Because here's the deal. If the enemy snipers pin you down, they're gonna pin your boys down. And that's not what we want. We want to make sure you're able to get your boys onto the objective and help them out. So constantly move around. Don't let them pin you down, because if they can't pin you down and you can constantly give suppressing fire, your guys aren't going to get pinned down. And that's the key there. You want to be doing the pinning. You don't want to be the one getting pinned. So with that in mind, that's basically the entire key way of counter sniping, is basically keep an eye out, keep constantly looking. Yeah, this guy got me with defibs here. That's pretty good. But keep an eye out, keep looking, keep moving, and don't get egotistical. That's really the biggest point there, is not letting yourself get caught up in, oh, this is an enemy sniper, I gotta kill him. No, focus on the other points, take out the guys when you know you need to, keep moving, and don't get lost. For the last major point here, before we kind of start summarizing, I really want to talk about tanks and engineers, because when you click on a sniper video, you're not thinking, what? Why do I need to care about tanks and engineers? I thought I was watching a sniper video. Well, it's because the Recon does still play a pivotal role, and that is in tank support. You might be like, why? What? I don't got to support the tank supports me. Well, you support each other, because the tank is good for pushing through major areas, spearheading assaults along with the assault class, and breaking through those tough to reach points. However, there are going to be nooks and crannies where enemies are going to be able to hide. And now, if it's super close quarters, yes. Like, don't get me wrong, that is the assault's job. The Recon should not be getting in there with their trusty bolt action and trying to clear everyone out. That's not what I'm saying. However, if you are staying near a tank on the outside of its flanks, and the tank is kind of hanging back and slowly pushing up, here's what you need to be doing. It's good to stay around the tank because A, it's going to provide you cover, but B, it's also going to be able to suppress anyone pushing up on you, so it can handle your close quarters and serve as a deterrent, but also you're going to be helping it. Think of it like a symbiotic relationship. So, if you see enemy engineers constantly poking their heads out of little areas, taking pot shots with RPGs at your tanks, the tank might not always be able to land them down as quick as maybe you will, for example. Especially if there's a lot of them. They might get overwhelmed, they might be looking at different areas. So keep an eye out for those engineers that pop out of nowhere behind hills or between bushes or on buildings and start taking pot shots at your guys. Because guess what? If you're fast enough and you're paying enough attention, you can take out those engineers before they do some serious damage to your tank buddies. That's really what you want to be doing. Is you really want to be focusing not so much on the close quarters because that's the tank's job, but you really want to be focusing on those long range positions where engineers might be popping their head out to start taking out your tanks. You really want to play for those positions. Because here's the deal. If the tank starts getting laid out before they're even anywhere close to the objective, they're not going to push. I guarantee they will not. So, if you can take out the enemy engineers before the tank starts getting closer, guess what? That tank will be so much more encouraged to just plow through the objective and help get all your boys on there. That's one of the biggest things you really want to focus on. So, I know it's a little bit of an odd one out. And I know it's kind of like a why should I care? But at the end of the day, if you will help your tank, he will help you. Even if he doesn't know what he's doing, he'll do his best at the very least. At least he'll get on the objective, hopefully. So really want to keep your eye out for those engineers in tandem with all the other things. So for the most part, that was pretty much it. I feel like those are the key three things you want to be doing. Is you want to be playing Overwatch, looking over your guys to make sure they're not getting pinned down by anyone. You want to be looking for enemy snipers to make sure that they're not doing the pinning either, but making sure you're taking them out because they're going to be doing the same thing you're doing. So you really want to make sure you're countering them. And then finally, with tanks and engineers, you really want to stay close to your tanks if applicable. Don't just sit next to them the whole time. Once again, that defeats the purpose. But really looking for those enemy engineers to make sure your tank can push. So notice how I brought up in pretty much most of those sections how if you focus on one role over the others will suffer. If you focus too much on Overwatch, you're probably going to get counter sniped quite a bit, and eventually the enemy snipers are going to start doing the pinning. If you focus too much on counter sniping, you're going to start missing out on those engineers and supports holding down your guys, preventing them from pushing. And if you focus too much on the engineer and tank section, well, I guarantee you, you will not get a push going. The Recon is not, in my opinion, the best class in the game, but they hold a unique position of being able to get your team closer to the objective and keep the momentum moving. That's why I wanted to use this match here specifically rather than just doing another no commentary, just like gameplay video. Is because I thought this was probably the best example I can think of where I was trying to do all three of those roles. Earlier in the video, I was staying close to a tank, kind of like looking out for any enemy engineers. As we pushed up on the middle of the map, I think I took out like one or two engineers shooting rockets exactly how I depicted. Obviously, I've been looking for sniper this whole time and constantly checking for those MG users sitting on hills just spraying at my buddies. So you really want to be able to play all three of those roles specifically, because if you can do that, you will take objectives. And now I know what you're saying, well, you didn't really talk about defense too much, but the same thing applies. If you're on the opposite side of that spectrum and your guys are constantly like getting like pinned, that means that the enemy team is going to be able to push up onto your objective. But if you're able to take out the MG users, if you're able to take down the snipers, and basically take down the guys doing the pinning, then they're not going to be able to push. And the same thing applies with tanks in that regard. If you're able to stop enemy engineers that might be taking out your tanks sitting on the points, then your tank won't die, and it'll be much harder for the enemy to take the objective. We all pretty much know that if you've ever seen a tank in full action. So, those are the three key things you really want to be doing. I think those kind of tie up everything pretty nicely for the most part. Of course, there's always like new and nuanced ways to play these roles and play these positions. But at the end of the day, I do think it's really important to think of yourself not as the solo one-man army getting in there and taking out everyone as quickly as possible, but rather you're the guy sitting back and being like, okay, where does my team need help? Where can I fill in? Because at the end of the day, that's what the sniper does. Because the assaults, they're breaking through the objective. The supports, they're reviving and giving people ammo. The engineers, they're keeping the tanks alive while destroying the enemies. But the Recon can kind of fit into multiple little positions there. So, and obviously, their gadgets suit them very well. I know I didn't talk very much about gadget play, but at the end of the day, the gadgets are there to support the Recon, what the Recon wants to do. Whether you're blowing up tanks with C4, setting up positions with claymores, spotting enemies with the drone or the tugs, there's a million ways to use the gadgets, and I feel like they all fit into the ways I described before. So at the end of the day, really focus, keep your focus on those three main things: the Overwatch, counter sniping, and then the tanks and engineers. And I think at the end of the day, you'll find a lot more matches in your favor. You'll be racking up more eliminations, of course, but at the end of the day, you'll be helping your buddies get onto those objectives. So that's pretty much all I had. I plan to maybe make a few more of these videos, so having a lot of fun doing it. So thank you so much for watching, and if you really enjoyed it, I would really appreciate if you would like and subscribe, and maybe share it if you feel like it. No obligation, but it would be really cool. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and yeah, that's pretty much it.